Welcome back. We're picking up with Biology 102 and Chapter 19. So we're going to pick up with the mollusks. That's where we left off with the last video. They're going to be comprised of nearly 85,000 aquatic and terrestrial species that include the bivalves, the gastropods, and the cephalopods. They are variable in size, but they can contain one of the largest invertebrates ever recorded. It's the colossal squid. The body plan is going to feature a bilateral symmetry, trypoblast, tissue layers, and a culmen protostome development. Also, it's going to have cephalization, except for the bivalves. There's not going to be a head region with them. And so you can see these in the pictures that we have below. Now, distinguishing specialized structures that we find in mollusks, one of the first main things, we're going to have a muscular foot. This is going to be used for locomotion, burrowing, attachment, but it's going to be modified also as tentacles, arms, and a siphon in the cephalopods. There's going to be a visceral mass. Remember, visceral means organ. So these are organs that are associated with their highly functional organ system. Squid and octopuses are going to possess ink sacs among their visceral mass that's going to be able to release a thick ink cloud to deter predation. Mantle is going to be a fold of tissue that protects the visceral mass, and it creates a mantle cavity. The mantle cavity is going to function in respiration, excretion, and reproduction. This will secrete a calcium carbonate shell around itself for protection. The shell is going to provide, like we said, protection, and it's also going to be specific to bivalves, some gastropods, and the nautiluses. But it exists in an internalized rudimentary structure that's going to be found in animals such as slugs, squids, and octopuses. Now, looking at the basic anatomy that we're going to find in a gastropod here, we're going to be able to see the medulla. It's going to come in, and you'll see the nerve cords which are wrapping around that section and branching out. From the medulla, or the mouth section, it's going to come into the crop. From the crop, it's going to travel down to the stomach, through the digestive glands, into the intestines, and from there, you're going to have the anus, where it's going to exit. So that's basically an open hollow tube that goes through the center. You'll also notice other organs that are going to be found within its shell structure. The circulatory system is going to consist of a chambered heart, blood vessels, and respiratory pigmentation, which is going to be the hemocyanin. Most mollusks are going to have an open circulatory system that's going to be apart from the cephalopods, who are going to possess a closed circulatory system. The respiratory system is going to occur primarily through gills in aquatic mollusks. The terrestrial mollusks are also going to possess highly vascularized areas that are going to be located in the mantle cavity that's going to function as a lung, and that's going to, which is exposed to the outside through an external respiratory organ known as the pneumostome. With the nervous system, it's going to consist of a simple arrangement of ganglion pairs and nerve cords that are going to become more sophisticated in the contemporaries with cephalization, well-functioning sense organs, and highly developed brains. The digestive system is going to be characterized by a complete gut tube with complex compartmentalized organs. They employ three distinct feeding behaviors, including filter feeding, herbivory, and predation, with the latter two facilitated by a chitinous medulla and a powerful beak-like jaw. So if you ever get a chance to dissect a squid or an octopi, they actually have a beak inside. The squid's the best because you can actually go in and pull that beak out. Excretion and osmoregulation is going to possess kidney-like metaphedra that's going to collect and expel nitrogenous waste. And so here, looking at that mollusk again. With reproduction, it's going to have sexual reproduction that's going to vary among mollusks, but it occurs mostly in dioecious individuals, and some are going to exhibit hermaphrodism. That's going to, such as like the bivalves and the gastropods. Now with the bivalves, they're going to exhibit internal and external fertilization methods. And in some species, they're going to implement distinct reproductive methods such as brooding their embryos, and they're going to use a parasitic larval stage that's going to attach to the gills or fins of passing fish. Gastropods are going to practice internal fertilization, and development normally progresses through a juvenile stage. But this process in marine species is going to involve both a free-swimming trichophore and a free-swimming villager stage. Among mollusks, the sexual reproduction is going to vary, but occurs with mostly dioecious individuals. While some are going to exhibit, we said, hermaphrodism, the bivalves and the gastropods don't. With the cephalopods, they're going to use what's called chromatophores to court and attract a mate. They practice internal fertilization, and they may care for eggs as they develop. And so that chromatophores are going to show you the different colorings that you see around there. They're going to be highlighted. Three main groups of mollusks are going to be your gastropod. Gastro means stomach, pod is foot, so a stomach foot. They're found in both aquatic and terrestrial environments. They include snails, land slugs, whelks, conchs, and sea slugs. Snails and slugs are going to account for about 3/4 or 75% of all mollusks. They contain an expanded foot on the bottom of their body, and it allows them to climb a vertical surface as easily as they glide horizontally. They're going to have protected defenses such as a shell, slime, and chemical defenses that can synthesize their own toxic chemicals and recycle another animal's toxic chemicals. They can use another animal's defenses as well, like a sea slug uses stinging cells from an anemone after ingesting it. Second group is going to be the bivalves. These are found in both aquatic environments and include the clams, scallops, oysters, and mussels. Clams are going to spend their lives buried in the mud and sand. Scallops are going to live on the seafloor, and oysters and mussels are going to fasten themselves to underwater objects such as rocks, pilings that support piers, and even boat hulls. They're protected by a pair of shells that are going to be hinged together by a ligament. They are filter feeders, which means they're going to draw a current of water in through a tube called an in-current siphon. They're going to draw this across their gills where the tiny food particles are going to be captured. And then they're going to send this water out through what's called an X-current siphon after they capture all the food. The third group is going to be the cephalopods. Cephal means head and pod means foot, so this is a head foot. These are going to be found in marine environments, so that's going to be salt water. All species are going to have tentacles. They're going to use these for walking, swimming, and capturing prey. They include the nautiluses, squids, octopuses, and the cuttlefish. Ecological impact is that they occupy different positions within the food webs and help to cleanse aquatic ecosystems. They influence decomposition and soil formation, and they're considered an ecosystem engineer because of this. Medical impact is that you can use snails as an intermediate host by flatworms and accumulate a lot of pathogenic bacteria by bivalves that possess a public health risk. While clinical trials have demonstrated the efficacy of synthetic drugs that are derived from the venom of marine gastropods. Economic impact. It's going to relate best to their importance in humans as a food source, which has been accelerated using aquaculture. It's going to be a form of farming that involves the controlled breeding, cultivating, and harvesting of aquatic organisms. Economic pests, sometimes these are going to be invasive species. They're known to cause damage to agricultural crops, cost millions of dollars per year to eradicate, and for their aggressive and destructive behaviors. Examples of this would be a giant African land snail, zebra mussels, and naval shipworms. Now we're going into the arthropods, so arthropoda. This is going to include a widely diverse and successful group of crustaceans, myriapods, arachnids, and insects. Species are going to reach over 1.2 million, although many scientists expect this number to be an underrepresentation. Adapted to all environments on Earth, which stems from their variable sizes, ranging from 1 millimeter up to 4 meters, and their feeding behaviors. So some of them are going to be carnivores, some are omnivores, some are herbivores, and some rely on parasitism. Their body plan is going to include a bilateral symmetry, a column, a protostome development, as well as a distinct structural innovation such as a metamerism and a hard exoskeleton and jointed appendages. Now with the metamerism, it's demonstrated by distinct body regions. So the head's going to consist of a feeding and nervous system structure. So if you look at that there, you can see it's got the brain, it has antenna, it's going to have a mouth. The thorax is exclusive to walking legs and wings. The abdomen is going to be allocated for organs of the digestive and reproductive systems. And the cephalothorax is going to be fused body segments that comprise of a head and a thorax. Exoskeletons are going to be composed of proteins, lipids, chitin, and calcium carbonate in crustaceans only. The exoskeleton provides protection from predators and desiccation. Remember, that's drying out, gives structural support, and it's a site for muscle attachment. It must undergo exedesis to promote body size growth. That basically, this is going to be molting. They have jointed appendages, which are going to be specialized outgrowths of the body wall used for a wide variety of purposes, such as walking, running, jumping, flying, swimming, and reproduction. They vary in number, arrangement, and type, the latter of which is going to be exemplified by specialized appendages including the venomous stinger of scorpions, spinnerets of spiders, and the wings of insects. When looking at the mouth parts, these appendages are going to be modified for distinct feeding behaviors. You have mandibles, which are going to be found in crustaceans, the myriapods, and insects. They function in holding, biting, tearing, grinding, and or chewing food. The food's going to be related modifications of mouth parts in some insects. So we have what's called a proboscis. This is an elongated siphoning tube that can reach nectar and flowers. So think of butterflies with this one. We have needle-like stylets that penetrate animal skin to suck blood. Think of a mosquito. And we have sponge-like labellum, which are going to suck up liquid and semi-liquid food. So think of a housefly. So in this picture, you can see each one of these mouth parts. So with the mandibles, you're going to see those are going to be located in this area. With the proboscis, we're going to see that located here. With the stylet, that's going to be the part that comes in and is able to penetrate. The labellum, that is going to be this part that you see here, that's like with a housefly. And then with the honeybee, it's going to have kind of a mixture. So it will have mandibles on the outside, and it has the proboscis that's going to come through the center here. Next, the chelicerae. These are going to be found in arachnids. These are pincer-like appendages that are used to capture prey, inject venom, and attach to the host. The modifications of these attachments are going to help that device to latch onto the host, like ticks, or fangs to inject venom, like in spiders. Next, we go to the digestive system. This is going to include a complete gut tube that's divided into a foregut, midgut, and hindgut. And you can see that here in the picture below. The foregut is going to grind the food particles into smaller components. The midgut is going to be an enzymatic digestion of food and absorption of nutrients. And then the hindgut is going to be a location where water absorption and removal of waste occurs. The circulatory system is going to transport nutrients that are acquired from the digestive system through an open circulatory system, which an insect lacks respiratory pigments. So we're not going to have anything like hemoglobin here. Although it does have hemomyosin, which is going to be common in arachnids and other arthropods. The respiratory system of insects and arachnids is going to possess a tracheal system, think of your throat or your windpipe, that takes in oxygen-rich air through external spiracles and distributes the air into individual cells of the body by a complex network of branching trachea. Additionally, specialized respiratory structures are going to include things like book lungs, gills, and some arachnids, such as ticks and mites, are going to lack this respiratory organ, and they're going to rely simply on direct diffusion of gas exchange. Excretory systems are going to be distinguished by metanephridia that remove nitrogenous waste and excess water, but insects and arachnids are going to possess what's called a malpighian tubule, and that's going to transport nitrogenous waste to the hindgut to be eliminated as part of its feces. The nervous system is going to be a complex system that's comprised of a dorsal brain and a ventral nerve cord that's going to be fused with segmented ganglion. The nervous system, like I said, is going to be responsible for coordinating movement and initiating learning. And so this was discovered by Karl von Frisch in 1927. It's also going to be responsible for forming well-developed sensory organs, such as specialized tactile receptors, chemoreceptors that are going to pick up on chemicals and tactile feeling, and photoreceptors that will pick up on visual cues or different forms of light. With reproduction of the arthropods, they're going to have a success. Their success has been measured based on their high reproductive potential. Group is going to mostly be dioecious and practice internal fertilization through copulation or spermatophores. Fertilized eggs are going to be deposited or retained internally by the female, but when hatched, they release either larvae that develop using indirect development or metamorphosis, like crustaceans and some arachnids and insects, or they develop young that resemble a smaller version of the adults that proceed through direct development. And that's going to be some arachnids, the myriapods, and the insects. Now coming directly into the four main groups. The first group we're going to talk about are the arachnids. These include our spiders, mites, ticks, and scorpions. These are all going to be land-dwelling and have jointed appendages. They lack antennae, maxillae, and mandibles. They're going to have 4 pairs of legs that are accompanied by 2 uniarmorous mouth part appendages. We have the chelicerae, which are going to be specialized as claws or fins, and the pedipalps. These are going to be specialized as sensory organs, claws, or reproductive structures. With the arachnids, we have spider venom that's going to contain 2 types of enzymes. The first disrupts the prey's nervous system and causes paralysis. The second enzyme, or other enzymes, will dissolve its internal organs and liquefy them so it can then suck out the contents. It's going to be harmless to animals as large as humans, but for smaller animals, this is deadly. 2 spiders are going to be dangerous to humans. The first that we see over here to the right is going to be the black widow. It's identified easily by the red hourglass that's going to be found on its dorsal portion of its body. So that's marking on the bottom surface of that female that we see there. It's going to produce a protein venom that's going to affect the victim's nervous system. Some slightly affected by venom, others might have a severe response, depending on the person. The symptoms are going to be local pain, muscle cramps, nausea, vomiting, and even chest pain. The second is going to be the brown recluse. Now this one does not look like it is as scary as the black widow. It's going to lack distinctive markings, but it's much more dangerous. Its bites are usually going to be painless, so you do not realize it at first. Then the symptoms will include severe pain, nausea, vomiting, blistering, and necrosis. That's going to be tissue death or death of the skin and fat. Necrosis could lead to an open wound that lasts for months or even years. Sometimes it even requires repeated skin grafts to close this open wound. The second group is going to be our crustaceans. These include lobsters, crabs, shrimp, and barnacles. Most are going to be aquatic dwelling, but include terrestrial species too. Many are going to have modified legs. For example, shrimps and barnacles are going to have comb-like projections that are used to capture plankton. Lobsters, crabs, and shrimp will have legs in their abdominal region that are used to hold eggs or newly hatched young. They have jointed appendages, which are going to be in pairs of 5 and located on the head. 2 pairs of antennae, 2 pairs of maxilla or mouth parts, and a pair of mandibles. Several pairs of appendages, like pinchers, walking, and swimming reproductive organs, and they're going to range from 5 to 8, depending on the species located along the cephalothoracic, thoracic, and abdominal segments. Most are going to be what we refer to as uniramous. These are single branch or biramous, which are going to be two branch. So looking here, we see our uniramous appendage. And the second one is going to be the biramous appendage. Remember, bi means two, so it has two parts. The third group is going to be millipedes and centipedes. These are going to have jointed appendages. Their head consists of one pair of uniamorous appendages that include antennae, maxilla, and mandibles. The centipedes have one pair of jointed appendages per segment, where the millipedes are going to have two jointed appendages per segment. Long segmented bodies with hard exoskeletons are going to surround their inner, softer portions. They mostly are going to live in forest, and they're found primarily among leaf litter, which is going to be cool and moist, so that's where they like to hang out. The millipedes are going to feed on decaying plant material, and centipedes are going to be predators. There's actually a house centipede that you can find that actively searches out spiders. So if you see these around your house, there is a good possibility that you have spiders. They use venomous pincher-like things to kill insects and even small mammals. They use jaws to tear their prey into pieces that's small enough for them to be able to swallow. The fourth group is going to be the insects. They have jointed appendages, uniramous appendages with one pair of antennae, mandibles, and two pairs of maxilla, three pairs of legs, and, in some species, one or two pairs of wings. Their life is going to consist of separate life stages. Most are going to live on land, but some can be aquatic. Ecological impact. They're occupants of multiple positions in the food web. They help to improve and maintain soil quality, and they're responsible for picking up on pollution. Their medical impact. They generate medical interest because of their venomous stings and bites, especially those of the spiders or the arachnids, such as the black widow, the brown recluse, and the Arizona bark scorpion, although the venom has also been demonstrated to possess several pharmacological properties. Horseshoe crabs, maggots, and biological vectors are going to transmit pathogens that cause human disease and are going to be medically significant. Biological vectors are going to include things such as insects, fleas, and ticks. That means that they're going to carry these things that can make you sick. Things that they may carry are going to be malaria. So mosquitoes are vectors for malaria. Leishmaniasis, these are going to be carried by sandflies. African sleeping sickness is going to be carried by the testis flies. Bubonic plague is known to be carried by fleas, and Lyme's disease is known to be carried by ticks. Economic impact. They have greater agricultural yields of vegetables, fruits, nuts, oils, and spices through pollination. Excessive economic burden due to crop damage occurred by agricultural pests, though, could be a problem. And they provide a valuable service to humans in the form of food and commercially available products. Now we're going to go into a new group, which is going to be the echinoderms. They're going to contain over 7,500 species of sea stars, brittle stars, and sea urchins, sea lilies, and sea cucumbers, with global distribution in almost all depths of strictly marine environments. So remember, that's going to be your saltwater environments. They're especially found amongst the coral reefs. They have radial symmetry. They have a triploblast culmate that's derived by laterally symmetrical larvae that are going to progress through deuterostome development. Remember, deuterostome is going to develop from the anus up. We've been talking about protostomes, which develop from the mouth down. All echinoderms are going to have an endoskeleton, which consists of an interlocking calcareous spicules and ossicles, which are going to give the animals a distinct rough spiny epidermis. The endoskeleton of a sea urchin is going to have several compact rows of closely fitting ossicles to form a shell known as a test. Modifications are going to include petra-like pedicellary, which are going to be used for protection, cleaning, and possessing venom to immobilize predators and prey. So think of sea urchins with these. Water vascular systems are going to be comprised of a network of water-filled canals that are connected to tube feet that are going to be used in locomotion, attachment, and or feeding. This is going to help supplement lack of a circulatory system. Respiration and excretion will occur through their tube-like feet, their skin gills, and respiratory trees. Now, the skin gills are going to be small external finger-like projections that are going to increase surface area that's available for direct diffusion of gases and waste across the body wall. The respiratory tree is going to be a pair of specialized internal structures that are comprised of branched tubules that open into the cloaca. The way they eat will either be carnivory, herbivory, detrivory, filter feeding, and deposit feeding. So that's the acquisition of food and particles that are suspended in soil and other sediments. There are going to be unique feeding behaviors used by echinoderms that demonstrate the diverse, unselected preference for different prey. Digestion is going to be characterized as a simple process that occurs in a complete gut tube. Variations are going to exist among the groups, including some sea stars, which use their tube feet to open bivalves and evert their cardiac stomach within the shell and release digestive enzymes to create a nutrient broth. Then they're going to take and they're going to absorb it through what's called their pyloric stomach. These are going to lack cephalization or a head region, but they do possess a well-defined nervous system that consists of a nerve ring that you see here that's going to radiate out to form a neural network that's connected by a nerve net to coordinate motor and sensory functions. Regeneration of body parts is going to be another defining feature of echinoderms and is often going to be implemented as part of the asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is going to feature some hermaphroditic species, but most are going to be dioecious. Fertilization of gametes is going to be external, and they develop including a radial intermediate cleavage and a deuterostome gastrulation. So that means that the anus is going to form first going into the stomach. This is going to produce bilateral symmetry in the larva and metamorphs into a radial symmetrical juvenile. In some deeper, colder ocean water species, the echinoderms may practice internal and external brooding of eggs, embryos, and juvenile phases because their larval stages will not survive the unfavorable conditions in the environment otherwise. With the ecological impact here, they're going to occupy multiple positions in the food web, help regulate populations of other organisms, improve substrates, and are widely used as bioindicators. Medical impact, they produce several secondary metabolites that are going to have demonstrated antimicrobial, anti-cancerous, and anti-inflammatory properties, although none have been considered for clinical trial. The economic impact is going to best be illustrated by sea stars whose predatory feeding behavior can cost harvesters of clams and oysters in the millions of dollars every year because their ability to devastate commercial bivalve beds. That's going to finish us up for our unit, and I'll see you back with our next unit.